worked as a parcel courier for almost 3 years. During the holiday season, we sometimes delivered until after midnight. Most drivers hated those shifts, but I preferred them. The roads were quiet, nobody called the office, and customers rarely complained about late packages. One night in December, my scanner added a delivery after I had completed my route. The address was 14 Hollow Road. I knew the area. Hollow Road ran through several kilometers of farmland before ending beside an abandoned railway line. There were only 13 houses. I assumed the address was a mistake, but the parcel was already inside my van. It was a small cardboard box wrapped in brown paper. The label had no sender information. Beneath the address were 3 words, "Deliver by 1 a.m." It was 12:42. My supervisor didn't answer his phone, so I followed the navigation system. Heavy rain began as I left the main road. After 10 minutes, my GPS directed me beyond the final occupied house. The road should have ended there. Instead, it continued into the trees. At 12:57, I saw a large Victorian house at the end of a circular driveway. One upstairs window was illuminated. I parked beside the gate and carried the parcel to the porch. The house looked abandoned. Paint hung from the walls in long strips, weeds covered the steps, and several windows had been boarded shut. Before I could knock, the front door opened. Nobody was standing behind it. Small muddy footprints began inside the hallway and continued across the porch. They stopped directly in front of me. I placed the parcel beside the door and used my scanner to photograph it. The delivery would not complete. The screen displayed, "Hand to resident." I called into the house. A telephone began ringing somewhere upstairs. Then a young boy answered from the darkness. "My parents are waiting in the dining room," he said. I should have left. But the application was tracking my location, and refusing a direct delivery instruction could cost me my job. I stepped inside. My flashlight revealed furniture covered in gray sheets. The entrance hall was filled with parcels. There were hundreds of them, stacked against the walls and beneath the staircase. Most were covered in years of dust. Every label displayed the same address. Several also carried the names of couriers from my company. I recognized one of them. A driver named Colin had disappeared during a night shift the previous winter. His empty van had been found beside an abandoned railway line. Something moved upstairs. Slow footsteps crossed the ceiling and stopped above me. The boy spoke again. "You brought the wrong one." His voice came from behind me this time. I turned around. The front door had closed. The parcel in my hands began vibrating. I tore open the paper. Inside was an old brass key and an instant photograph. The photograph showed me asleep in my bedroom. Written beneath it was tomorrow's date. A television switched on inside the dining room. Its screen displayed a live security camera view of my van outside. A rain-soaked man stood beside it. He wore my uniform. The figure raised its head toward the camera. It had my face. My scanner suddenly confirmed the delivery. A signature appeared on the screen. It was my name, written in my handwriting. I ran to the front door, but the handle wouldn't move. Remembering the key, I pushed it into the lock. The door opened immediately. As I crossed the porch, someone ran through the house behind me. The footsteps were too fast and too heavy to belong to a child. I reached my van and drove away. In the mirror, the duplicate was standing in the middle of the road. It held the parcel against its chest. When I returned to the depot, the parcel was sitting on my passenger seat. The photograph and key were still inside. The photograph and key were still inside. My supervisor searched the delivery system. No order had been assigned to Hollow Road. According to the GPS records, my van had remained parked beside the railway line for 43 minutes. There was no road beyond it. Police later took me to the location during daylight. The Victorian house was there, but it had burned down 26 years earlier. A family of 3 had died inside. Their youngest son had been found on the porch holding a parcel that nobody remembered delivering. I resigned the following morning. For several months, nothing happened. Then, shortly before Christmas, a delivery driver knocked on my apartment door. He handed me a small box wrapped in brown paper. The label displayed my name and address. Beneath them were 3 words, "Return to Hollow Road." Lena delivered food at night while studying at university. Shortly after midnight, she accepted her final order. It came from a roadside diner about 20 minutes outside the city. The order was simple: 1 burger, 1 coffee, and a slice of apple pie. The customer had already paid and left only one instruction: do not cancel after entering Bellwether. Lena had never heard of Bellwether. The restaurant employee became visibly uncomfortable when she collected the order. He told her they hadn't received an order from that address in years. Before Lena could question him, the navigation application recalculated her route. A new road appeared on the map. She followed it through a forest until her mobile signal disappeared. A weathered town sign emerged from the fog. Beyond it stood 2 rows of old wooden houses. Every porch light was on. People stood motionless in the doorways. Each person held an empty dinner plate. As Lena drove past, their heads slowly turned to follow her car. The application directed her toward an old diner at the center of town. A message appeared: "Customer is waiting inside." The building looked exactly like the restaurant where she had collected the food, except decades older. Through its fogged windows, Lena could see at least 20 customers. Every one of them was facing her. She left the engine running and carried the food to the entrance. The diners turned their heads as she walked past the windows. Inside, the building was empty. Dust covered the tables. The lights buzzed overhead. On the counter was 1 clean plate, 1 warm cup of coffee, and a receipt printed with Lena's name. An old newspaper clipping had been pinned behind the counter. It described the disappearance of Bellwether in 1979. Following a severe storm, police discovered that every resident had vanished. Meals remained on tables. Cars were parked outside homes. No bodies were ever found. The clipping included a photograph of the diner. Standing behind its counter was the same employee who had given Lena the order that night. Her phone vibrated. "Delivery completed. Customer has left a tip." A second message followed: "Your tip is waiting in the kitchen." Lena turned toward the kitchen door. Someone stood behind its frosted glass. The silhouette wore a waitress uniform. It raised one hand and tapped the glass 3 times. Lena backed toward the exit. The front door locked. All the people she had seen through the windows were now standing inside the diner. They occupied every table, silently watching her. Each had an empty plate. The waitress stepped out of the kitchen carrying the food Lena had delivered. She looked exactly like Lena. The duplicate placed the bag on the counter and smiled. "You're late," she said. "They've been waiting for you." The lights went out. Lena threw a chair through the front window and climbed outside. As she ran to her car, the residents emerged from their houses. They walked into the road and formed a line behind her vehicle. Lena drove through the fog until the town disappeared. At 4:30 that morning, police found her car parked beside a closed forest road. Lena was asleep behind the wheel. There was no town nearby. Her delivery history showed that the order had been completed in the middle of an empty field. The customer had left a 5-star review. It read, "She found her way back." Lena stopped delivering at night. Several months later, the restaurant from which she had collected the order permanently closed. While workers removed the old counter, they discovered a photograph hidden inside the wall. It showed Bellwether's diner in 1979. The tables were filled with missing residents. Behind the counter stood Lena, wearing a waitress uniform and holding an empty plate. Marcus supervised the night shift at a large parcel distribution center. At 3:07 one morning, he noticed a box moving in the wrong direction. Every conveyor carried packages toward the loading area. This one moved against the belts, traveling deeper into the warehouse. Marcus stopped the system. The box continued moving. It passed beneath inactive scanners and changed direction at every junction as if it knew where it was going. Eventually, it stopped in front of Marcus. The cardboard was wet and badly damaged. A shipping label displayed the warehouse's address. The recipient was Marcus. The dispatch date was the following morning. Marcus carried it to the inspection room. Inside were his employee badge, a broken wristwatch, and a small security camera with a blinking red light. He was still wearing his badge. His watch was still on his wrist. The camera turned toward him by itself. A printer behind him activated. It produced a photograph taken from inside the box. Marcus was visible opening it. Someone was standing behind him. He turned around. The inspection room was empty. Marcus contacted security and brought the camera to the control room. When they connected it to a monitor, the screen displayed live footage of the warehouse. Marcus appeared on every camera simultaneously. One version of him stood beside the loading bay. Another walked between storage racks. A third sat inside his office. All of them stopped moving at the same moment. Then they looked directly into their cameras. One monitor displayed a timestamp 40 minutes in the future. It showed Marcus sitting in the control room. A tall figure made from stacked parcels stood behind his chair. Marcus looked over his shoulder. Nothing was there. The conveyor system restarted. Hundreds of boxes began traveling in the wrong direction. They fell from the belts and formed two walls through the warehouse. Together, they created a corridor leading toward a sealed loading door. As he crossed the warehouse, the lights switched off behind him one row at a time. Something made from cardboard followed him between the belts. He reached the staff exit just before the final lights failed. Outside, dawn was beginning. Marcus walked toward his car. The damaged parcel was sitting on the driver's seat, although the vehicle was locked. Inside the warehouse entrance, another Marcus watched him through the glass. The duplicate raised one hand. Marcus never returned to work. Management blamed the incident on exhaustion and a mechanical fault. They claimed the surveillance recordings contained nothing unusual. 3 weeks later, the distribution center shipped a package to Marcus's home. Inside was the uniform he had worn during his final shift. The fabric was covered in dust. His missing employee badge was attached to it. At the bottom of the box was a security photograph. It showed Marcus standing outside his house, holding the parcel. Behind him was a delivery driver made entirely from stacked cardboard boxes. Marcus turned around. Nobody was there. Then his doorbell rang. A damaged package was waiting on the porch. The label displayed tomorrow's date.